son of a sailor.
Good morning, South Coast. Welcome to 1420 AM WBSM. I'm Eric DeWicki, president of Northeast Maritime Institute, talking to you here on Maritime Matters. We've got history, tradition, values in our maritime heritage. They matter, folks. We're here to talk about it. I'm here this morning with Ed Washburn from the Harbor Development Commission. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's exciting to have you. You know, when I look at you, I realize, hey, there's another Eric DeWicki. You're the youngest guy in the room. I remember being at Coast Guard headquarters in Washington, D.C., at the International Maritime Organization in London, being the youngest guy by 30 years. Now I'm not that youngest guy anymore. Now I've got an Ed Washburn in the room. So welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So tell me a little bit about how you got involved with the Harbor Development Commission.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a great place to start. So I've been interested, from a young age, both in the ocean and maritime and boats, as a young kid, and I went to school for something that was similar, transportation planning, and I began to focus much more on freight movement, the movement of freight, looking at our current, what we have in the United States, which is very little cargo going between U.S. ports, especially in the containerized trade. So that's really where I began to focus my studies, and so I graduated, and then I started focusing on specifically coastal shipping and short sea shipping. And that's actually where I met Kristen Dekas. So I came down here, I guess it was 2008. I might have even been 2007. And Kristen was hosting at UMass Dartmouth a short sea shipping symposium where my colleagues and I were presenting a study on coastal shipping. So that's where I first met Kristen. And she actually brought me on board about 5 years ago. And I've been immersed in every aspect of the maritime field since.
You really have. It's been fun to watch your career advance, for you to get involved in New Bedford from a local perspective. I believe I've had you as a student.
Yep.
I've watched you enter into the field, watched you from afar, and climb the ladder relatively quickly. It's pretty impressive, and it's something that I'm excited about because it really does take sometimes to create change. Somebody looking at a community with a different set of lenses, and coming from, you grew up in Worcester.
Yep.
You studied at Cornell. You studied in Gloucester. So you came here and you really were thrown into the fire, but you came in with a different set of lenses than we have or we might have as local persons living in the area.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you see when you first came to New Bedford?
Well, New Bedford is such a great city. It's got such an awesome history. It's got such a deep history, and that really sets the tone of how people in New Bedford identify themselves and how the city identifies itself. And one of the great things about New Bedford is that it's culturally, it's politically, it's economically focused on the waterfront. It's focused on the fishing industry, the cargo industry, the services industry, education at Northeast Maritime. And there's so many different entities that are focused on the waterfront. And you can see that as you take a step back and you go up Union Street, the focus is always on, both figuratively and geographically, on the waterfront. And that's similar to, I grew up in Worcester, which is, a similar city in a lot of ways in terms of demographics and things like that. And, but it's 40 miles inland. But you look at Worcester, and Worcester has sort of transformed itself into a logistics hub. So CSX just did a $100 million expansion in Worcester. And the irony is the way that just freight flows and trade works is that a lot of the containers that come into Worcester are coming from the West Coast. So mapping that was always fascinating for me, and learning how. So all right, so how do you take a reality like that where Worcester is probably bigger than Boston in terms of containers. How do you focus on what New Bedford is good at, and how do you get New Bedford to really grow in a way that makes sense for the existing businesses, and then how do you meld that with what it is that we're trying to attract? So it's been a really, really fun learning experience. Just how do you benefit the businesses that are already here, and how do you do it in a way that brings in new blood and brings in new complementary businesses, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's about integrating new opportunities with the existing infrastructure, existing players. It's truly a balancing act that is not easy. Sometimes we get entrenched in our ways, and we don't like change. I think that's the most significant human nature that we have built
Absolutely.
within our psyche. But change is good, and I think, change is good in the sense that we embrace our heritage and history and what we have, but augment what we have with new ideas and new opportunities. And there's plenty of room, and there's plenty of space, and there's plenty of opportunities, especially with trying to realign our harbor with the types of vessels that will come here and trade. I know it's exciting for me to see back at State Pier, some of the larger vessels showing up. It's a memory of my childhood. I've said it before on this show that it's one of the best memories that I have. But again, looking outside my office window and looking over at State Pier from Fairhaven and seeing those big ships come in, that's exciting, and that spells opportunity
Absolutely.
for people to get jobs and people to understand that, hey, you can get a job on a ship and travel around the world, and that's New Bedford tradition, and that's kind of the neat thing that we can really start to see again. So it really is exciting.
Absolutely, and it just to add to that, one of the great things about New Bedford is that because of the history and because of New Bedford being geographically located where it is, we have a lot of the infrastructure right at the foot of Union Street. The Custom House is the oldest continuously used custom house, so customs can actually walk down to the pier. The ILA, they all live in New Bedford. They can walk down to the pier to go to work. It's such a, it's such a, you look at it and you say, wow. I mean, that's how it used to be, and the fact that you can still do things like that today, and you can still be successful at it, using the blueprint from before. How do you expand that blueprint, and how do you continue down that road? It's an exciting thing.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the first things that I've seen in a long time for change was the development of the New Bedford Marine Commerce Terminal, and that project was spun as a terminal that was built for wind energy, but the reality is it was designed to be multimodal in a sense. It was designed to take multi facets of cargo, and you hear people say, well, it's not going to work because the wind energy industry isn't going to work. Well, folks, it is a beautiful, beautiful terminal that can be used for other things. So what are you guys thinking? I know you have to partner with the state in terms of discussion, and it's a state-run facility, but New Bedford as the Harbor Development Commission and the mayor's office really have to focus on how are they going to attract business to that terminal. What's the plan?
Yeah, it's a great question, and anytime that there's a new piece of infrastructure, especially a new expensive piece of infrastructure in the port, obviously, and rightfully so, people are going to be focused on that. But this is, you need to look at that facility in context. You look at the rest of the port, and this is the first new piece of infrastructure really we've had in 50 years, and a lot has changed in the last 50 years. So it's not as great as it would be if we had Cape Wind operating out of there right now. It was built and designed with all other cargoes in mind. That was one of the first projects that we worked on when I came. Kristen was spearheading this along with Matt Morrissey and other folks in New Bedford, and then subsequently, obviously, by the mayor. As we focused on, what is New Bedford going to be good at? We have some pretty pretty obvious restrictions. One of them being the hurricane barrier, the other one being the depth of water. So what will New Bedford be good at? And pretty quickly we were able to identify project cargo. So offshore wind is a type of project cargo, big heavy stuff, that's coming in by boat, because it has to come in by boat because it can't go in by water, by road rather. So project cargo, and that's not just offshore wind. That's boilers for power plants. That's bridges. That's big fabricated steel stuff.
All the heavy lift stuff.
And this facility that we have, because of the offshore wind industry, was designed to handle loads of 4,000 pounds per square foot, which is roughly 3 to 4 times more than anything in the area in terms of point load. And it really provides us with an opportunity to, work with the heavy lift carriers, Big Lift, Hansa Heavy Lift, and others, to identify, all right, what can we bring in now that we have this piece of infrastructure that can come in. Hopefully we can do some other fabrication at the site and then go out by barge to another community, just because we have this piece of infrastructure. So those are the conversations that we're having in terms of project cargo. The other thing that, we look at our strengths. New Bedford, commercial fishing hub, huge processing industry. There's a lot of, we're unique in New England because we're actually exporting fish product. How do we leverage our strengths to keep on going? And it could be containerized, it could be more break bulk, because of the cold storage facilities that we have. Fresh produce is something that we're trying to expand upon, and having this new facility that can handle containers, that can handle project cargo, that can handle everything else, opens up a huge opportunity for the port. And it's something that we need to, frankly, we need to adapt to, and the state needs to adapt to. But it's not going to happen overnight. But we're already getting calls about, can we use the facility? How does that work? So it's something that we're working on, and it's something that is, there's no doubt in my mind that facility is going to be a great productive facility in the years to come. But getting the Port of New Bedford on a map, a place that hasn't had a facility like this in 50 years on the map to the shipping world, is one of the struggles. And that's we're pushing right now.
Well, it's funny because, one of the good things that the Kalis administration had done was start to look at developing the Port of New Bedford. And then Mayor Lang took it to a new point, and really, I think bringing in Kristen Dekas, bringing in you, quite frankly, was a good step forward. I'm pretty close to the former Mayor Lang, and I just love, I've watched him over the years, and I love the way he sets things up for the future. And it never takes credit, and that facility is to be credited, because I remember listening to him get a little bit angry and saying, yeah, you can call it a sheep, but it's a dog, and make sure that dog can run in every direction. And I think the fact is that little hub will become a very crucial part of our infrastructure. I would say in like you said, in the next few years. It just takes a little bit of marketing and letting people know you're here, and then again, we have those issues with the I-95 corridor bulging at the discs, if you will.
Absolutely.
And we got to get containerized trucking off the roads and onto ships and barges, and we really have to start demanding that the U.S. Department of Transportation start paying attention to that, because driving down the I-95 corridor, like I just did to drop my son off in Washington a few weeks ago, is a dangerous thing, and I don't think we need as many trucks as we do need ships to redistribute those containerized cargoes. It's cheaper, folks. It's cheaper. So,
absolutely.
So one of the exciting things we're going to check in on in a few minutes is the dredging project. But ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to 1420 AM WBSM Maritime Matters with Eric DeWicki, president of Northeast Maritime Institute, And again, I'm here with Ed Washburn. Ed, what is your title with Harbor Development?
I'm currently the acting port director.
But you're not acting. You're kind of doing. So
Yeah.
he's doing a good job, folks. We'll be right back on 1420 AM WBSM. Good morning, South Coast. This is Eric DeWicki, president of Northeast Maritime Institute, here on 1420 AM WBSM. You're listening to Maritime Matters, and I'm here with Ed Washburn, the acting director of the Harbor Development Commission. And Ed, I get to enthusiastically say, as one of our former students at Northeast Maritime Institute.
Absolutely.
Did you have fun over there, Ed?
Oh, the organization that you have going over there is awesome. I mean, I had a great time I worked with Casey and Bob Glover, and we got to go in the simulator a little bit. But it's a great facility. If I'm sure your listeners would love a tour, but it's so great to learn about. First of all, I took my captain's course with Eric, and so first of all, one of the, it's great to learn about how it used to be done. You never know really where you're going until you learn your history, right? And so learning about set and drift and all that good stuff was a lot of fun, and somebody that's always been really loved maps. It's really cool to learn how to do that. So and then sort of translating that into the modern end of things, it really is a fun experience. So if anyone out there hasn't had a chance to go see Eric's facility in Fairhaven, it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, we are pretty proud of our new, I jokingly say, our micro college. Our micro college actually trains about 800 professional mariners a year, and then we became licensed by the state of Massachusetts to become the first private maritime college in the history of the United States. That's exciting for us in the greater New Bedford area, the South Coast area, and I think it. We're going to be making waves that we can surf, actually, and I think we're taking a great traditional education platform, introducing modern technologies. We have a $6 million simulation center at the Institute, so folks come by, take a look, drive a ship. Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool. But what we're doing is we really want to make New Bedford a maritime hub once again, and I think we do that through education. And we're working on an exciting partnership with BCC and UMass Dartmouth that we will probably be able to announce the formalities of here in October. But we're going to be doing some dynamite stuff, and Ed, I'm going to ask you to teach. So
really,
there's a course waiting for you. So we're putting it on the spot in front of the listenership, ladies and gentlemen, and it's going to be good. But we're talking about developing a port logistics management degree that is going to be an advanced degree, a bachelor's degree with UMass Dartmouth, but advanced in the sense of we're going to take global protocol and try and apply it here to New Bedford area. So
very
it
cool.
is exciting,
very
and
cool.
We're really looking forward to that. But I did promise to talk about dredging. And what a heck of a large project this dredging project has turned out to be. It had to happen, folks. I mean, there's no question about it. If we're going to be a maritime community, which we are, we have been for almost 300 years. So we have to take care of and maintain our ports and our port facilities. And dredging was the first step. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so folks out there that don't really know what dredging is. So it's basically like snow plowing. You need to do it in order for you to get from your driveway to the highway to where you work. And the same thing is true for the maritime world. As time goes on, channels fill in and they need to be maintained. And New Bedford is, we obviously have a huge amount of maritime industry coming in, and we have a huge amount in the fishing industry that want to expand. And expansion requires more channels, deeper channels, and it's something that is the one of the highest priorities of the port, because that's really where you end up getting the economic development benefits. So there's actually two projects that we need to focus on. One is the federal channel, so that's actually maintained by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. But because of legacy contamination in New Bedford, we actually there is a local match to disposing of that material. So that's one project that's going to need both state and federal money. And the other one is the Phase 5 dredging. So we've had 4 phases so far of private berths included in that dredging. And the fact of the matter is, because of the legacy contamination, it's really difficult for private businesses to dredge their docks in a cost-effective way. So the Harbor Development Commission has come in, and the state has come in, and in the past they've funded about 80% of the cost of the dredging. And we've seen, I mean, just since 2008, the Phase 3 dredging project, we've seen a huge amount of economic activity as a result of that. The Fairhaven shipyard was dredged. The Steamship Authority was dredged, and we're actually seeing a whole lot more activity from the Steamship Authority for maintenance in New Bedford Harbor. So the economic impact is measurable, and it's almost immediate. And it's something that we're working with the state. We're trying to figure out with the new administration where dredging sits for the Commonwealth, and really trying to make that case to the state level folks and to the U.S. Army Corps on the federal level.
Sure. No, I'll tell you, it really, we have to remember that first and foremost, this whole community was based off of it, or built on its maritime trade and its maritime enterprises. The idea that people get a little bit nervous about dredging. We have a problem here that has lasted for a good 60, 70 years, and it's finally being taken care of. And we have that responsibility to take care of these things for our children and our grandchildren. I know there are people against the dredging, but the reality is we need to push our economy forward. And the easiest way to push our economy forward is by looking at our heritage, looking at who we are. People get upset about the dredging. Folks, stop it. We need to get people employed in this area. We get people angry with the shipyards. Stop it. We need to employ people in this area. These shipyards existed for hundreds of years, and we're complaining about the noise they're emitting. The reality is we have to kind of collaborate as a community. It's like raising a child. It takes a village. And if we're going to move New Bedford forward, educationally, industrially, we need to join hands together and move these projects forward. So, I'll get off my soapbox here, but I really believe we really have to embrace our maritime heritage, our maritime traditions, our current industries, and really move our community forward out into the world once again.
No, Eric, I couldn't agree more. And I think I'm happy to talk to anybody about the facts about what's actually happening with dredging, and obviously CAD cells, confined aquatic disposal cells, and it really is critical to the economy. If we want to be a port, if we want to have the economic benefits of being a port in New Bedford, it's something that we need to do. And it's also, frankly, an environmental cleanup. The reason why it's sequestering safely all of those PCBs that currently are flowing into Buzzards Bay. So it's obviously an economic benefit, but just as importantly, it's an environmental benefit.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we really have to understand that we're protecting the lives of our children, the food that they consume. Their children and beyond. It is a responsibility that we have to embrace. And again, I think if anybody has any questions, reach out to Ed. He can certainly educate anybody with any concerns.
I'm happy to.
The exciting part is we're moving industry forward. We've tried to reinvent ourselves for the last 50 or so years since the textiles industry left, and again, I'm a firm believer that we embrace our heritage and who we were to move our industrial base forward, and that's the maritime industry, folks.
And that's one of the key advantages that New Bedford has because of folks like you, Eric, that are so focused on the maritime industry, that are invested in the maritime industry, that really see the returns of what you're doing at Northeast Maritime. It's so critical, and it's really what makes New Bedford unique, is that the folks in New Bedford and Fairhaven and the surrounding areas appreciate how much the port does in terms of economically for the area.
Well, one of the fun things that I got to do maybe about 6 weeks ago was walk around the waterfront with one of my instructors who lives in Woods Hole. And he said, I had no idea. And I said, you know something? I had no idea. And there were new businesses, maritime-related businesses, that popped up that certainly have been birthed just in Fairhaven, on the Fairhaven side. And it was nice to be out of a car and have the ability to pay attention and walk around and see the new programs that have developed both from a nonprofit organizations, the rowing clubs, the sailing clubs. There's a guy on Main Street running a whole sailing program. I didn't even know about it. I'm just so excited about that.
Yeah.
I want to do that in New Bedford. My big New Bedford treks are I drive down to downtown New Bedford Burger, DNB Burger, and I park and I get the world's best burger. And by the way, folks, I travel all over the world every month, and I've never had a better burger than DNB Burger. And that's a free plug.
Couldn't agree more, Eric.
But I need to go walk around the waterfront, and I hadn't done that. And we used to be firmly established in New Bedford. We used to have the institute at the YWCA in the Bourne Counting House. But when we moved to Fairhaven, I didn't want to cross that doggone bridge. And speaking of that doggone bridge, let's talk about that white elephant, or that elephant in the room, I should say.
Yeah.
What do you think? Thoughts?
So we've been working with Mass DOT on the study for it's over a year now, and just working through a lot of one of the funniest parts of the whole process is going through the studies that have been going on for the last 60 years. Literally since 1950s, when they first studied the replacement of the bridge. And just going through all those studies and looking at one of the things I like to point out the most. So it's a 95-foot opening on the east side, 92 or something, or 94 on the west side. So when the bridge was designed in 1891, I looked this up. The widest vessel was 58 feet. The beam was 58 feet wide, which is perfect for the bridge.
Sure.
And then I looked at the widest vessel now. It's 224 feet wide.
Wow.
So obviously that will never come in.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. But in the last 130 years of maritime history, the vessels have changed. In the last 60 years, in the last 10 years, the vessels have changed.
Last 10 years changed dramatically, especially cargo vessels.
Absolutely. So, in order for New Bedford to be competitive, we need to look at this bridge, and we need to identify what we want happening north of the bridge, and how can we sort of benefit the port. That's where I come in. Obviously, I know there's other stakeholders. So what are the alternatives that do that the best? And I was very happy to work with Mass DOT. They were able to come up with alternatives that, in both cases, in both of their recommended alternatives, at least it's a draft right now, in both of their recommended alternatives, they call for a much wider opening. In one, it's 270 horizontal clearance, and the other, it's 220. So either one of those alternatives is a huge improvement, and I think really really benefits the businesses, including Maritime International, the international stevedore in the harbor. It really benefits them quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny because when I first moved back to the greater New Bedford area, I literally was appalled by the bridge. Matter of fact, if you want to know the truth, that's why I moved the business or the institute to Fairhaven.
Really?
So I didn't have to drive over that doggone bridge, as I put it. But when you look at it from a global perspective and what other ports have done and really how to grow a true maritime trade, if you really look at it in depth, and people are going to get a little upset with me right now, I would wipe out that bridge tomorrow. You don't need a bridge there. You know, it might hurt the few businesses that exist still. We've got to find ways to get people to funnel back into those businesses. But the reality is, if we truly want to be an international competitor, you know, we just need to get used to using Coggeshall Street and I-195. And with the new Route 18, you know, that's pretty darn good. You know, the only thing we would have to figure out is how to truly support Fairhaven hardware, because that's a long-standing business and a business I use constantly.
Right.
But
as does the port.
you know, that doggone bridge, it's an impediment to our growth, and it really needs to be looked at as maybe even more in depth than we're looking at it right now. Do we really need a bridge if we're going to attract the type of cargoes in the future and build the port the way it can, you know, withstand actually what I think is going to be a growing fishing community, because I think aquaculture is going to grow. I think all kinds of opportunities that are developing in Nova Scotia, for example, can happen right out of here. You know, I truly believe that we need to think 100 years from now and not 50 years from now, because it is the responsible thing. You figure, when did we put that bridge in? What was the date? Was it 38?
No, I think so. It was designed so the dimensions were designed in 1891 or something.
Oh my goodness!
And they rebuilt it, I think, in the 10s, the
No
1910s.
Kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
wow.
I think I could be wrong.
So
I'm
a
sure.
100-year plan.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You need to have a 100-year plan, obviously.
Yeah.
If we're past 100 years now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's incredible. Well, it's you know, something that is the elephant in the room and for the community. I haven't met one local person that commutes between New Bedford and Fairhaven either way that hasn't complained about that doggone bridge. So I know I even wrote a little op-ed piece that was a little conservative, but I didn't want to put my whole ideas out there.
Yeah.
Get rid of the doggone thing. But you know, the reality is, we might want to look that way. It's bothering me all the time I think about it, because I think of Singapore and I think of Rotterdam, and I think of they literally encompassed, you know, and even filled in some of the areas that you could get to old businesses that were stuck out on islands, and they made them part of their infrastructure.
It certainly is a different world today. I think the Mass DOT study really did a hard look at sort of all the alternatives, including no bridge, including, you know, replacing the existing bridge, and you know, there is a historic sort of factor. There is that connection that's existed for all these years between New Bedford and Fairhaven, and the economies that are obviously so connected. So I think, I think we want to make sure that those businesses, including you know, on the north side, there's a lot of marine industrial businesses that benefit from the connection to the New Bedford fish processors. So I do think the road connection, you know, is important to have. You know, there certainly are ways that you can work around it, but I think the Mass DOT study, the alternatives, really set us up for big growth in the future, and, you know, gives us a new 21st century piece of infrastructure that we can design the port around, because really that's such a bottleneck currently.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
and going from 90 to 270 is a huge,
The wider the
benefit.
better. The wider the
Absolutely.
better. It really will set us up for success in the future, and that's really my intent, is to
Yeah.
provoke, the idea that the wider the bridge is, the better for our economy on a local level.
Agreed.
And we can share that economy. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to 1420 AM WBSM. I'm Eric DeWicki, president of Northeast Maritime Institute, speaking to you on Maritime Matters with Ed Washburn, acting Harbor Development Commissioner. Good morning, South Coast. This is Eric DeWicki, president of Northeast Maritime Institute. I'm talking to you on 1420 AM WBSM, talking about Maritime Matters, our history, our tradition and values. Our maritime heritage matter, folks, and that's why we're here talking to you about these issues. I've got Ed Washburn, acting director of the Harbor Development Commission of New Bedford, and I'll tell you what, it's been a great show, Ed. We've talked about some real solid issues that people are asking questions about and thinking about, and you've really answered some questions, some of those tough questions, in a way that, heck, even I understood. So really, it really is a great show, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a great opportunity.
Well, I'll tell you what, we've talked about dredging. We've talked about that doggone bridge, the Fairhaven, New Bedford Bridge. We've talked about the New Bedford Marine Commerce Terminal and how it's going to be a successful opportunity for New Bedford. Let's get to the nuts and bolts of our economy. Let's talk about the fishing industry. You do some pretty amazing things for our fishing industry. Why don't you tell the public what you guys do?
Well, as I think most people in the area know, New Bedford is the #1 fishing port by value. So, and that's mostly because of the sea scallop. So it's something that we've been doing for centuries. It's something that is growing in New Bedford, which is very unique in the commercial fishing industry, as other ports are losing, as a total allowable catch for other ports are dropping. We're seeing a lot of those vessels come to New Bedford because of the supporting industries. In addition to things like Northeast Maritime, where people can learn how to do these activities on the ocean. The ice houses, the fuel barges, all of those ancillary activities that are so critical to our waterfront economy is actually what gives us the strength, and is the reason why we continue to grow in an industry that's not growing in other places. So the commercial fishing industry is, there are some of the best entrepreneurs that I've ever met. There are people in the commercial fishing industry that can figure out how to harvest fish, make a profit, market it in a unique way, and they continue to do it. I really see the role of the Harbor Development Commission. How do we continue to help private industry really make a bigger impact? We talk a lot about, up in Boston, there's all these technology clusters. There's things like the Internet of Things, looking at data in a very in a very specific way, and it's happening in a lot of different industries. And one of the things that we really want to help improve is, how do we get some of those thinkers and some of those data scientists and some of those people that are putting together all of these really innovative and fun things around the world, how do we get them to focus on the fishing industry and really help improve efficiencies for harvesting, improve efficiencies for processing, and how do we get them to do it in New Bedford? So how do we get them to invest in New Bedford, incubate in New Bedford, start their business in New Bedford, so that New Bedford can also see the economic benefits of the jobs and other things like that. So that's going to be, a big thing that that the Port of New Bedford is going to be focused on in the next few years, and it takes a lot of interaction with the fishing industry. It's really exciting to see some of the opportunities that you can sort of that reinvent such a crucial part of New Bedford's economy for centuries. The commercial fishing industry. How do we utilize that new technology and leverage that new technology to improve the economy of the fishing industry. And it's really, there's some really exciting stuff coming down the pike, and we want to be in the middle of it.
Sure. No, I think, when you look back at the whaling industry, whaling is fishing, and then you look at the advancement of the fishing industry, we did so well. We're doing really well with the scallop industry. That is a success story with managed product. We've got to get our proverbial stuff together on the ground fishing industry.
Absolutely.
And just reading the paper last few weeks, I was scratching my head about the last meeting that NOAA had, and we actually have to include technologies that'll make it more cost effective, not add more cost
Right.
to these vessel owners to restrict them to really engage in their livelihood. The thing that interests me most is seeing how we can create a port that maintains status quo and actually increases opportunities for our fishing industry while integrating other aspects of our industry. Commercial shipping. The recreational industries have grown. I'll tell you, I am so proud of the two ladies managing the Pope's Island Marina. I can't even tell you. That place is full again.
It is.
It was empty for quite a few years. We've got them doing an exceptionally professional job. People are now on a waiting list to come to that marina, and that's another opportunity that we have as a community to really embrace the recreational boating industry. And I'm a guy that kind of shies away from that recreational boating industry because I'm a former Coast Guard reservist that in the summers I was plucking recreational boaters off of rocks and thinking, how the heck do people get to drive these things? But it really does have a solid impact on our economy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Eric, you're talking about Penny and Donna, my bosses. I'm just kidding. But in a lot of ways, they have taken the reins over there, and really brought customer service back in a really big way. And the interaction with the recreational boaters is crucial. And one of the big pushes of the Mayor Mitchell has always been the all the above approach. So when we look at the commercial fishing industry, obviously we need to continue with the policy, the policy support that we are. One of the big topic right now is the observer coverage. Obviously we need to continue to support and that burden should not be put on the ground fishermen who have plenty of other burdens that they're dealing with now. So all of that, continued policy support on the federal level and on the state level is very important. But then you also look at recreational boating, which frankly is a big part of our revenue budget at Pope's Island Marina. It's critical. So we need to find ways to make commercial fishing and cargo work with recreational boating. And I think we've really come up with a pretty unique brand. There's a level of authenticity in New Bedford that you don't really get anyplace else. People can come in and pull up to a dinghy dock on the New Bedford side, meandering through all of the commercial fishing vessels. It's a very unique thing, and it's a brand that we're really continuing to push. We've been very successful, as you noted this year, with recreational boaters. The launch service that we implemented last year.
I've actually used that launch service, and it's fantastic.
It's been, we're up 43% from last year at this time, and it's one of those critical pieces of infrastructure that, it's the chicken and the egg. Yeah, we don't have a launch, so it's one of those things that we didn't know when we needed to actually do the launch because we didn't know we had the demand. Then we implemented the launch. The demand has skyrocketed, and it's turned New Bedford. It's put New Bedford on the map for recreational boaters, and that's a huge. We talk a lot about the services provided by port industries. Recreational boating is a huge part of what they do, whether it's fuel, whether it's repairs, and it's certainly something that we need to continue to develop.
Well, those support industries are really reaping the benefits as a result of the work that Penny and Donna have done and yourself have done with redeveloping that Pope's Island Marina. It is fantastic. It is service born with a smile, and I'll tell you, I am really proud to be a local guy watching people come down from Boston and come in from Providence and keep their boats in our marina. It's really fantastic, and
It is.
and it's fantastic taking that launch over from Pope's Island Marina over to New Bedford and grabbing a bite to eat. It's another ancillary industry that's really rebirthing itself is the restaurant industry in New Bedford. I'll tell you what, that Route 18 corridor, now that it's been reconfigured, is reminding me more and more about the Portland, Maine story. And I think we're going to be a foodie heaven, a seafoodie heaven. And I think we are going to start seeing people move in on the weekends just to hang out like they do in Portland, Maine, just to eat. It is a hoot. I spoke earlier about D&B Burger, and it's really fantastic. But there's about 4 or 5 new restaurants right down on that waterfront area, and I promised myself I'm going to eat at each one of them before December 1st. So I love my seafood, and
You should. The Patriots game tonight.
Oh, there you go.
Game.
There you go. It'll be a little past my bedtime, but I really do believe that we have opportunities growing as a result of our maritime heritage, our maritime infrastructure as we see it today, and I really believe in our future. I believe, you talked about clusters earlier. I believe we're going to be a maritime cluster, and we're going to be a maritime cluster that embraces all aspects of the maritime industry. And while it might not be a Rotterdam or Singapore, we're going to be an impressive story for the rest of the United States on how to integrate industries and how to cohabitate, if you will, to let those ancillary businesses continue to develop and blossom. Very important aspect of our economy here in New Bedford, and it really is truly the fabric of who we are. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking with Ed Washburn, the acting director of the Harbor Development Commission, and we're talking about some really interesting things about our harbor, our collective harbor in New Bedford and Fairhaven, and how it increases opportunities for our local economy and where it's going. And Ed, we kind of off break, we spoke about the land use plan. Tell me a little bit what that is and what it means to the public.
Yeah, so we started a land use plan about a year ago. We put out an RFP. Sasaki Associates was the winning proposal, and Sasaki is a world-renowned land use planning firm that has done ports like Rotterdam, ports like they did the Salem waterfront study more
Beautiful.
locally. And they also did in L.A. Long Beach as well. So, the land use plan that they've developed really looks at our strengths. It's going to come out with a few recommendations on, of key pieces of infrastructure to invest in, and then how to develop the areas around it for marine industrial uses. Not pushing anybody out at all. But potentially, if there is a vacancy, how do you leverage that piece of infrastructure to get a use going on that parcel that really makes sense for the waterfront and for the waterfront economy? So in early October, we're going to be having a public meeting that identifies a few of the projects. It doesn't involve the fishing industry, but it also involves bringing people down, continuing to bring people down to the waterfront so that they can learn about the fishing industry, they can learn about all the commercial aspects of the waterfront. But it's really exciting stuff.
That's fantastic. So do you have a date on that for the public meeting?
We don't yet. We probably, we're aiming for the first week of October. We don't have a date set. but we will be advertising it.
Okay,
so keep
good,
an eye out.
good, perfect. And people need to certainly engage in that and go with an open mind. And if you see a problem, offer a solution. Don't go there just to complain.
Well said.
That's my advice. Well, that's about it, Ed. Thank you very much for coming. And this was really, for me, a great learning experience and a great show. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We are here talking to Ed Washburn. We're leaving you right now on 1420 AM WBSM on Maritime Matters.